Joshua's boots crunched against the freshly fallen snow, the cold air biting at his cheeks and turning each breath into a visible puff of mist. He wiped his gloved hand across his brow, leaving streaks of frost on the sleeve of his coat. His eyes were fixed on the snowman standing proudly on his front lawn, a creation he had spent the last hour meticulously shaping. Its carrot nose jutted out confidently, scarf wrapped snugly around its neck, stick arms posed as if mid-gesture, and its head tilted ever so slightly toward the neighboring house. From this angle, it almost seemed alive, surveying the world with a frozen, impartial gaze. And yet, to Ella, the woman across the street, it was an affront of the highest order. Ella, perched on her porch like a general on a battlefield, was a force of pure indignation. She was heavy-set, with a sharp, bobbed haircut that seemed to emphasize the pointedness of her expressions, and her pale puffer jacket did nothing to soften the storm raging inside her. Her hands flew in frantic gestures, one gripping a phone pressed tightly to her ear. The other waved dismissively toward Joshua's yard, as if her fury could physically dismantle his handiwork. Every few seconds, she punctuated her gestures with a sharp bark of words that carried across the thin winter air. "It's looking at me. It's mocking me. I'm calling the police." Joshua leaned on his shovel, exhaling slowly and letting the absurdity wash over him. The scene before him was simultaneously ridiculous and infuriating. The snowman, his loyal winter companion, was nothing more than a decoration, yet it had become a symbol of neighborly tension. He muttered under his breath, "Because a snowman dares to glance at your house, of course." There was no reasoning with Ella, he realized immediately. She had transformed a harmless tilt of a snowman's head into a personal insult, and there was no halfway ground in her worldview. The crunch of boots on snow alerted Joshua to a movement down the street. A patrol car rolled slowly toward Ella's house, its engine humming faintly in the cold. The officers inside exchanged glances, faces frozen in polite skepticism. As the car stopped, a young officer stepped out, his breath fogging in the icy air. "Good morning, ma'am. We received a call about a snowman," he asked cautiously. Ella's response was a high-pitched shriek of indignation. "It's not just a snowman. It's hostile. It's looking at me funny. You have to do something." Her words tumbled over one another like a storm of snowflakes, frantic and incoherent, but each syllable carried unmistakable menace. Joshua raised an eyebrow, feeling a mixture of disbelief and simmering irritation. The officer, clearly at a loss, glanced toward him. Joshua stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of surrender, though his face betrayed his amusement. "It's literally a snowman," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully, as if explaining physics to a particularly stubborn toddler. "I built it this morning. It snows sticks and a carrot. That's all. It doesn't move. It doesn't think. And it certainly doesn't have opinions about your house." Ella turned sharply, eyes blazing. "Opinions? It's intimidating. My children are terrified. I can't even enjoy my porch without fear of his gaze." Her voice quivered between rage and the slightest hint of panic. Joshua blinked. He had expected outrage, maybe even irritation, but this level of theatrical alarm was something else entirely. The officer cleared his throat, awkward and unprepared for the absurdity. "Ma'am, we can't really remove a snowman without a complaint backed by code or law. It's, technically legal." Ella's hands dropped to her hips, her phone still clutched in one hand. "Legal? This is harassment. I am going to the HOA. They will make him, take it down immediately." She spat the words with precision, as if each syllable could summon the power of authority. Joshua felt a twinge of exasperation mingled with amusement. Ella had been a thorn in the neighborhood's side for years, always policing minor details and reporting insignificant issues to the HOA. Her past grievances had ranged from Christmas lights that weren't properly symmetrical to lawn decorations that blocked her view of the mailbox. In each case, she had wielded her entitlement like a sword, convinced the world must conform to her exacting standards. And now, a snowman had crossed the line. Joshua glanced at the snowman, whose tilted head now seemed almost smug, as if it had read the situation perfectly. He crouched slightly, straightened the scarf, and tapped the carrot nose, whispering softly, "You're in for it now, buddy." In that moment, the absurdity of the situation mingled with a flicker of inspiration. Ella's outrage, while irrational, had provided him with an opportunity he hadn't anticipated. The officer, sensing the stalemate, made a polite suggestion. Perhaps a compromise? Adjust the snowman's pose, maybe. Joshua shook his head, suppressing a laugh. That won't work. She's not looking for compromise. She's looking for vindication. He could feel the tension in the air thickening, the sort that precedes a conflict you know will spiral far beyond reason. Ella's next words sliced through the cold silence like a jagged icicle. "I will not be mocked. I will have the HOA send notices, fines, anything necessary to remove that abomination from my sight." Her glare was unwavering, a tangible weight pressing down on Joshua, challenging him not to react. Joshua stepped back, glancing around at the quiet street. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some with amusement, others with thinly veiled concern. It was a spectacle, a collision of absurdity and entitlement that felt almost cinematic in its tension. He exhaled slowly, letting the cold bite at his lungs as he considered his options. Reason had failed. Pleasantries had failed. Direct confrontation with Ella was a trap, a pitfall paved with potential fines and HOA headaches. Yet as he looked at the snowman, its tilted head and stick arms perfectly positioned, he felt a surge of clarity. He didn't need to fight her directly. He just needed a plan clever enough to turn her arrogance against itself. He allowed a small, private smile to curl at the corner of his lips. The officer, unsure how to proceed, glanced again at Ella, then back at Joshua, and finally muttered something about keeping documentation before retreating to his car. The engine hummed to life, fading down the street, leaving the two of them alone in the winter silence. Ella remained, fists clenched, a storm cloud of fury and disbelief. Her chest rose and fell with rapid breaths, and Joshua could almost hear the gears turning in her mind, plotting her next move, convinced that victory was imminent. Joshua straightened, adjusted his gloves, and surveyed his snowy creation one last time. The snowman's tilted gaze, now perfectly aligned with Ella's front porch, seemed almost intentional, as if it understood the chaos it had inspired. For the first time that morning, Joshua felt the rush of anticipation, the thrill of a game already in motion. He stepped back, shovel in hand, and whispered to himself, "If she wants a war, she's about to get one." Outside, the cold air shimmered, the street lay quiet, and the snow reflected the pale winter sun. For a brief moment, everything seemed frozen in suspense, the calm before a storm of entitlement, absurdity, and clever retaliation. Joshua's eyes flicked toward the house, Ella's figure rigid on the porch, and he knew this was only the beginning. The snowman remained, silent, immovable, yet somehow fully capable of mischief. And in that frozen tableau, Joshua felt the first stirrings of a plan that would turn the tables in ways Ella could never imagine. The stage was set, the characters in place, and the winter air held its breath, waiting for the next move. Joshua spent the next few hours pacing his front yard, shovel in hand, eyes darting between the snowman and Ella's porch. Her presence had not wavered. She stood there like a sentinel of indignation, phone glued to her ear, gestures punctuating every word. Each time he tried a casual approach, she flared up, reciting grievances as if rehearsed for a courtroom drama. "It's threatening. I feel unsafe. This must be stopped immediately." Joshua raised his hands in mock surrender. "I swear it's a snowman, not a hit squad," he muttered under his breath, the words lost to the crisp air before Ella could hear. Her glare, sharp enough to cut glass, reminded him that reason had no place here. He tried compromise first. He stepped toward her, voice calm, offering adjustments. "I can turn it slightly, add a scarf that faces away from your porch, even put on a hat." Ella's eyes narrowed to slits, disbelief mingled with fury. "Turn it? That's not enough. It's mocking me, humiliating me, and I won't stand for it." Her words were precise, like daggers aimed at diplomacy. Joshua realized instantly, peace would not prevail. Her entitlement was impervious to logic, impervious to humor, impervious to any notion of reality. Joshua stepped back, exhaling, letting the cold air fill his lungs. He needed a new approach, something clever, something indirect. That was when the idea struck him, as sudden and sharp as the winter wind. If direct confrontation failed, he would not fight her on her terms. He would exploit the very arrogance that fueled her outrage, turning her own obsession with control into a spectacle that would leave her defenseless. He began documenting everything, phone in hand, capturing videos of Ella's tirades, her exaggerated gestures, the absurdity of her complaints. He made sure to angle the camera subtly, including the snowman in every shot, its tilted head perfectly positioned as though it were aware of the drama it had inspired. Joshua even caught neighbors peeking out their windows, stifling laughter or whispering comments to one another. Each recording was a testament to the absurdity, a growing archive that would later serve as both shield and weapon. By late morning, the first wave of social media exposure had begun. Joshua posted a short, humorous clip of the snowman, titled with a wry touch, "When a snowman has opinions about your HOA." Within minutes, the video began gaining traction, likes and shares multiplying faster than snowflakes in a blizzard. Comments poured in from local neighbors, ranging from amused cheers to incredulous laughter at Ella's extreme reaction. Joshua leaned against the front porch railing, watching the digital ripple of chaos spread like wildfire, a small grin tugging at his lips. The absurdity of it all was intoxicating, and the sense of control returning to him was almost euphoric. Ella, however, remained undeterred. Her phone never left her hand. Her eyes were bloodshot from hours of outrage and self-righteous plotting. She contacted the HOA, sending an email marked urgent, with screenshots of Joshua's posts, her complaints dripping with hyperbolic indignation. Each word was carefully chosen to cast him as a malicious provocateur, a villain in her narrative. Yet Joshua knew the limits of her influence. Her exaggerations, once laid bare against evidence of harmless winter fun, would crumble under scrutiny. Her pride, he realized, was her greatest weakness, and pride was a weapon he could turn against her. As the afternoon sun reflected off the snow, Joshua set to work on Phase 2. He built another snowman, smaller, positioned strategically closer to the street, its head turned again toward Ella's house. He added a sign that read, "Neighborhood Watch, Frost Division." Then another, and another, each slightly varied, all meticulously placed, so that from Ella's perspective, it appeared the entire block had conspired to surveil her. By evening, half a dozen snowmen stood frozen in silent judgment, their heads cocked, stick arms mid-gesture, scarves fluttering lightly in the wind. The scene was both whimsical and menacing, a calculated theater of absurdity designed to provoke a reaction without crossing any legal boundaries. Word of the snowmen began to spread. Neighbors whispered across fences, curious glances exchanged, some shaking their heads, others suppressing laughter. Joshua's small project had transformed into a community spectacle, each snowman a character in an unfolding story, each tilt of a head a silent commentary on entitlement run amok. He knew the key was restraint. Too many over-the-top gestures would undermine the subtlety that made it effective. Each snowman was a symbol, each carefully orchestrated glance a narrative of playful defiance. Ella's fury intensified. She stormed across her yard, flailing at the newest additions, her voice cracking with frustration. "This is harassment. This is bullying. I will not allow this to continue." Joshua watched from a distance, every word fueling his strategic patience. Her predictable escalation was the perfect counterbalance to his calculated calm. He let her vent, recorded snippets of her rants, and even captured a neighbor's quiet chuckle from a safe distance. Each fragment of chaos strengthened his advantage, building a dossier of absurdity that would prove invaluable if the conflict escalated further. Joshua also began engaging with local social media groups subtly. He posted photos of the snowmen in humorous sequences, captions highlighting their watchful eyes and patrol rotations. Engagement soared, with neighbors sharing and tagging friends, delighting in the unfolding story. The narrative was shifting. Public opinion was tilting toward amusement and disbelief at Ella's overreaction. Joshua remained careful to avoid outright mockery, keeping the humor light and whimsical, ensuring that if Ella attempted any formal complaints, she would appear unreasonable and overblown. As night fell, Joshua stood in his yard, surveying the tableau he had created. The snowmen glistened under the soft glow of streetlights, their stick arms casting long shadows across the snow, their carrot noses gleaming like tiny beacons. The scene was peaceful yet tense, a frozen battlefield of wit and patience. He could hear Ella inside, muttering and tapping away on her phone, plotting her next move with predictable fury. Joshua felt a thrill of anticipation. The conflict had escalated exactly as he had envisioned. Direct confrontation had failed, yes, but by exploiting Ella's arrogance and obsession with control, he had shifted the battlefield. Now the snowmen were not just decorations. They were instruments of strategy, silent allies in a contest of patience, cunning, and public perception. Each tilt of a head was a calculated strike, each placement a move in a game that Ella could not hope to understand fully until it was too late. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the soft crunch of distant footsteps. Joshua glanced at the street, half expecting the police or an HOA representative to arrive, but the quiet remained, punctuated only by the occasional creak of a branch weighted with snow. He turned back to his frozen creations, a private smirk curling at his lips. The stage was set, and the narrative was firmly in his control. Morning arrived crisp and brilliant, the sun glinting off the snow like scattered diamonds. Joshua stepped outside, a mug of steaming coffee warming his hands, and took in the scene he had orchestrated overnight. The yard was now a miniature army of snowmen, each tilted head aimed unmistakably at Ella's porch. Their stick arms jutted in various poses, some pointing, some raised like tiny sentinels, and scarves fluttered faintly in the winter breeze. From a distance, it looked whimsical, innocent even, but Joshua knew the precise chaos he had created. The absurdity was now undeniable, and the neighborhood was about to witness it unfold. Across the street, Ella's figure appeared at her window, her posture rigid, hands clenching the windowsill as if bracing against an invisible storm. Joshua watched with quiet amusement, noting the flash of fury in her eyes. She had spent the night seething, plotting her next move, convinced that she could regain control, unaware that the narrative had already shifted beyond her grasp. Joshua sipped his coffee, savoring the warmth and the anticipation, letting the tension build like the calm before an inevitable avalanche. By mid-morning, curious neighbors had begun to emerge, peering from windows and doorways. Whispers and muffled laughter traveled along the snowy street, carried in part by the shared knowledge of Joshua's viral social media posts. The snowmen had taken on a life of their own, silent witnesses to the spectacle of entitlement run amok. One neighbor stepped cautiously onto the sidewalk, phone in hand, filming a video. Joshua caught their eye and gave a small nod, the unspoken message clear. The stage was set, and the audience had arrived. Ella, oblivious to the shifting public perception, stormed onto her porch in full dramatic flourish. Her phone remained pressed to her ear, voice sharp with indignation. "This is harassment. I demand they be removed. The HOA must act immediately." She gestured wildly, pointing at the snowmen as though accusing them of crimes only she could perceive. Her neighbors, however, were no longer silently complicit. Some laughed openly, others shook their heads in disbelief, and a few even began taking photos to post online. The absurdity of her rage against frozen figures was now public, documented, and viral. Joshua stepped out from his front door, hands tucked into his coat pockets, projecting calm authority. "Good morning, Ella," he said casually, voice carrying across the snow-covered street. "I see the snowmen are making quite the impression." Ella spun to him, eyes wide with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Impression? They're mocking me. This is psychological warfare. You will be held accountable." Joshua smiled faintly, letting her words hang in the air. He had anticipated this escalation. Her pride, her obsession with control, was now a weapon he could exploit without ever raising a hand. I think they just admire your dedication to everything, he said, voice deliberately light. The neighbors stifled laughter, their attention glued to the interaction. Every gesture Ella made, every shouted complaint, only reinforced the narrative Joshua had carefully constructed. By noon, the HOA arrived, summoned by Ella's frantic complaints. The board members stepped cautiously onto the street, scanning the snowmen and the scene with a mixture of bemusement and hesitation. One of them, clipboard in hand, finally spoke. Mr. Joshua, we received complaints regarding your snowmen. Joshua gestured toward the figures, letting the winter tableau speak for itself. They're simply decorations, he said evenly, built for fun, entirely within neighborhood guidelines. Ella's voice rose in a crescendo of indignation. Fun? This is psychological torment. You are deliberately targeting me. She gestured toward each snowman, as if demonstrating a carefully plotted conspiracy. The HOA members exchanged glances, clearly caught between procedure and the undeniable absurdity unfolding before them. Joshua could almost hear their unspoken thought. Her reaction far exceeded any reasonable interpretation of the law. The neighborhood's collective amusement reached a fever pitch. Phones were out, videos recorded, posts uploaded. Social media engagement skyrocketed, turning Ella into an unwitting viral phenomenon. Comments ranged from light-hearted teasing to outright ridicule, documenting her over-the-top response and chronicling her obsession with minor neighborhood disputes. Every viral share, every retweet, strengthened Joshua's position. He had not only avoided conflict, but had turned it into a masterclass of strategic patience and clever exposure. As the hours passed, Ella's frustration mounted visibly. She attempted to demand immediate removal of the snowmen, but the HOA members were now hesitant, caught between enforcing rules and acknowledging the undeniable spectacle of absurdity. Joshua remained calm, stepping lightly through the snow to adjust one snowman scarf, giving it the faintest tilt toward her house, as if to wink at the absurdity of her plight. Each minor adjustment was a calculated move, a silent reminder that he controlled the narrative without confrontation. Neighbors began to congregate, drawn by the spectacle. Children laughed as they pointed at the tilted heads. Neighbors whispered in amusement, and cameras captured every reaction. The snowmen, once simple winter creations, had become silent arbiters of justice. Ella's indignation, once a private storm, was now a public spectacle, amplified by social media, documented by witnesses, and firmly cemented in collective memory. By late afternoon, the situation reached its peak. Ella, desperate to regain control, attempted to escalate through legal threats, but every word she spoke, every complaint she lodged, only highlighted her irrational obsession. The HOA dismissed her latest filings, citing lack of legal grounds, and gently reminded her that personal grudges and overreactions could not dictate neighborhood decor. Her sense of power crumbled, replaced by frustration and the dawning realization that she had become the subject of widespread amusement. Joshua watched quietly, leaning against the railing of his porch, savoring the culmination of patience, creativity, and strategy. The snowmen stood unwavering, silent sentinels of poetic justice. Ella retreated inside, slamming doors, her silhouette visible only briefly through the curtains, signaling both defeat and continued resentment. The neighborhood, however, had witnessed her unraveling, and the narrative had shifted irrevocably in Joshua's favor. As evening descended, the sky painted in shades of indigo and rose, Joshua allowed himself a small sigh of satisfaction. The snowmen glistened under the fading light, their carrot noses catching the last rays of the sun. Neighbors waved, some called out playful remarks, and the atmosphere hummed with quiet triumph. Every moment of Ella's outrage, every viral clip, every shared laugh had reinforced a singular truth. Pride and entitlement, when unchecked, could be turned into instruments of their own downfall. Joshua stepped inside for the final time that day, glancing back at the snowmen.